Imagine this. You're standing in a grand ballroom, surrounded by the finest company, your heart racing with anticipation. The music swells, and there, across the room, stands the man every woman in the room has her eye on, Mr. Fitzwilliam Darcy. His reputation precedes him. He is rich, handsome, and, above all, mysterious. But what if the secret to winning his heart doesn't lie in your beauty, your fortune, or your social standing, but in something far more elusive, the art of seduction? Welcome to Mr. Darcy's Guide to Courtship, the secrets of seduction from Jane Austen's most eligible Bachelor. If you've ever wondered how Mr. Darcy of Pride and Prejudice turned from aloof aristocrat to devoted lover, this is the book that unlocks his most well-guarded secrets. And make no mistake, Darcy isn't just offering some simple advice on flirting or playing the field. No, this guide is an invitation into the complex, fascinating world of Regency-era romance, told through the eyes of one of literature's most enigmatic and, let's admit it, swoon-worthy bachelors. In these pages, Darcy himself pulls back the curtain on the rules and rituals of courtship that governed his world. From the art of holding a conversation that intrigues and captivates to the subtle ways of conveying your feelings without ever saying a word, you'll uncover how Darcy perfected the balance of mystery, honor, and desire. This is more than just dating advice. It's a masterclass in the timeless dance between attraction and restraint. But let's not be mistaken. This isn't a dry, academic treatise on Regency etiquette. No, this guide is written with all the passion, wit, and charm that one would expect from the man who captured Elizabeth Bennet's heart and the hearts of countless readers ever since. Through clever anecdotes, keen observations, and a healthy dose of Darcy's characteristic wit, you'll not only learn how to be the most desirable partner in the room, but also how to navigate the complexities of love and courtship with grace and confidence. Whether you're seeking to understand the historical context of romance or simply want to know how to embody the kind of elegance that Darcy exudes with effortless ease, this book offers something for everyone. It's for those who long for a romance that transcends time, and for those who want to master the art of seduction with the same quiet intensity as Mr. Darcy himself. So, as you listen, allow yourself to be transported to an era where the stakes of love were high, the rules were strict, and the pursuit of the heart was nothing short of an art form. Darcy's world is full of passion, intrigue, and, most of all, love that transcends every obstacle. Ready to take your place in the ballroom? Darcy is waiting to teach you how to win at the game of love. Part 1. The Principles of Courtship. The book begins with Mr. Fitzwilliam Darcy, Jane Austen's iconic character from Pride and Prejudice, positioning himself as an authority on the subject of romance. From the first page, Darcy exudes his trademark arrogance, tempered by moments of unexpected self-awareness. He acknowledges his infamous blunders, particularly with Elizabeth Bennet, but frames them as learning experiences that have elevated him to the role of a relationship expert. With a mix of genuine insight and comical hubris, Darcy sets out to impart the rules of proper courtship. The art of self-presentation. Becoming a worthy bachelor, Darcy begins by emphasizing the importance of self-presentation. He believes that before a gentleman even considers courting a lady, he must first cultivate himself as a person of value. How can one expect a woman of taste and sense to entertain the attentions of a man who is himself devoid of taste or sense? Darcy writes, delivering this nugget of wisdom with his signature blend of snobbery and sincerity. He outlines the essential traits of a true gentleman. 1. Elegance of appearance. Darcy waxes poetic about the importance of impeccable dress and grooming. He insists that every stitch of clothing and every strand of hair must convey one's status and seriousness. While this may seem superficial, Darcy argues that outward appearance reflects inner discipline and respect for social decorum. 2. Mastery of conversation. For Darcy, language is the ultimate tool of seduction. He humorously recounts his own failed attempts at charming Elizabeth Bennet, confessing that his infamous first proposal lacked grace and tact. With hindsight, he advises readers to choose words carefully, to strike a balance between wit and sincerity, and to avoid overreaching one's conversational abilities. 3. Exuding confidence without conceit. Darcy addresses the delicate balance between confidence and arrogance, a topic on which he is, perhaps, unintentionally ironic. He stresses that a gentleman must be self-assured but not overbearing, aware of his worth, but humble enough to recognize the virtues of others. Through these anecdotes, Darcy subtly pokes fun at himself while doling out genuinely practical advice. Identifying a worthy match. Darcy next delves into the qualities one should seek in a prospective partner. His criteria, unsurprisingly, are precise and exacting. While his tone can occasionally veer toward the judgmental, he tempers it with genuine reverence for the institution of courtship. 1. The importance of intelligence. Beauty may dazzle, but wit endures, Darcy proclaims, nodding to his admiration of Elizabeth Bennet's sharp mind. He warns against pursuing partners who lack intellectual depth, as they are unlikely to provide the companionship and stimulation necessary for a lifelong relationship. 2. Manners and grace. Darcy reflects on the social norms of the Regency era, emphasizing that a potential partner's manners reveal much about their character. He cautions readers to observe how their object of affection treats others, particularly those of lower status, as this demonstrates true kindness. 3. Shared values and interests. Darcy candidly admits that he once underestimated the importance of compatibility, recalling his initial dismissal of Elizabeth Bennet's family and social standing. He urges readers to focus on shared values and genuine connection rather than superficial concerns like wealth or lineage. These musings are peppered with Darcy's dry humor, making even his most pretentious observations feel oddly endearing. The dance of courtship, subtlety, and strategy. Darcy is quick to remind readers that courtship is not a sprint but a delicate dance. He shares his thoughts on the subtleties of romantic pursuit, offering advice that feels both timeless and uniquely tailored to the Regency world. 1. The importance of timing. Darcy emphasizes that patience is key in matters of the heart. He shares an amusing story of a friend, perhaps a thinly veiled reference to Bingley, who rushed into courtship and nearly frightened the lady in question. Darcy's lesson? Allow feelings to develop naturally and never force a connection. 2. The power of observation. Before making one's intentions known, Darcy advises observing the object of one's affection to discern their preferences and interests. He recounts his own awkward attempts to engage Elizabeth Bennet in conversation, admitting that his lack of preparation led to numerous missteps. 3. Making an impression without being overbearing. Darcy offers a tongue-in-cheek guide to winning a lady's favor, which includes everything from delivering compliments with subtlety to demonstrating one's worth through acts of service. He cautions, however, against grand gestures that may come across as insincere or ostentatious. Lessons learned. Darcy's reflections on his own blunders. Perhaps the most entertaining section of Part 1 is Darcy's candid recounting of his own missteps in courting Elizabeth Bennet. With a mix of self-deprecation and grudging admiration for Elizabeth's strength of character, Darcy analyzes his early failures in courtship. 1. The first proposal. Darcy revisits the disastrous moment when he proposed to Elizabeth Bennet in a manner that was, by his own admission, woefully inept. He humorously dissects his arrogance and lack of sensitivity, acknowledging that his approach was more likely to inspire outrage than affection. 2. Learning to listen. Darcy reflects on how Elizabeth's rejection forced him to confront his own shortcomings. He describes this as a turning point, where he began to truly understand the importance of humility and respect in courtship. 3. Winning her respect. Finally, Darcy recounts how he worked to earn Elizabeth's trust and admiration, not through words, but through actions. He emphasizes that true love requires effort, growth, and a willingness to change. Part 2. The courtship rituals and the subtle art of seduction. In this second part of Mr. Darcy's Guide to Courtship, Fitzwilliam Darcy takes a more hands-on approach to the intricacies of romantic pursuit. Having established the importance of self-presentation and identifying a worthy match, he now focuses on the more nuanced elements of courtship, the rituals, the subtle signals, and the art of seduction itself. Darcy's tone is, as always, confident but tinged with an amusing humility as he reflects on his past missteps and offers his esteemed advice. The courtship dance, a delicate balance. Darcy begins part 2 by explaining that courtship is not simply a transactional affair, but rather an elaborate and delicate dance. Like the graceful movements of a Regency-era waltz, courtship requires precision, timing, and mutual understanding. He compares the courtship process to a ballroom dance, in which both participants must understand the rules and navigate the intricacies with care. Much like the waltz, courtship requires both partners to move in harmony, Darcy writes. One cannot rush the steps, and one must certainly not attempt to lead the dance when one is unfamiliar with the rhythm. Darcy emphasizes that patience is key in the early stages of courtship. He recalls a time when, in his eagerness to assert his affections, he nearly overwhelmed Elizabeth Bennet with his ardor. He humorously recounts his overly formal manner during their early interactions, acknowledging that he had much to learn about reading subtle social cues. Making the first move, understanding signals and timing. Darcy reveals the importance of subtlety and timing in making the first move. Rather than rushing headlong into declarations of love or obvious flirtation, he advocates for a more restrained, nuanced approach. He advises against overwhelming a lady with attention, arguing that a gentle, respectful pursuit is far more effective than an overbearing display of affection. However, Darcy also addresses the common misstep of playing it too cool. He explains that while restraint is important, complete indifference can be just as damaging as excessive enthusiasm. He likens it to the careful art of keeping a fire alive. One must stoke it with interest, but never let it blaze out of control. He also discusses the crucial role of timing in the first approach. Darcy insists that the right moment must be chosen carefully, where the lady is most receptive and comfortable. He offers an anecdote about his own clumsy attempts to initiate a conversation with Elizabeth at the Netherfield ball, revealing how his nervousness and lack of social finesse almost ruined the chance for any meaningful connection. "I was too eager and too anxious," Darcy admits, which resulted in awkwardness and misunderstanding. The lesson here is patience and observation. The role of conversation, the power of wit and words. Darcy continues by stressing the importance of conversation in courtship. Words, he writes, are the subtle weapons of courtship. They can either captivate or alienate, depending on how they are wielded. He asserts that a gentleman must not only be able to speak well, but also to listen with genuine interest. He recounts his first serious conversation with Elizabeth Bennet, which was marked by intellectual sparring rather than romantic advances. Darcy reflects fondly on their witty exchanges, despite their sharpness, and notes that Elizabeth's intelligence was one of the qualities that made her so irresistible. He admits that at the time, he did not fully appreciate her verbal prowess and was instead focused on her prejudices and misunderstandings. "I learned quickly," he writes, "that a lady's sharp mind is not to be feared but celebrated." Darcy advises his readers to be careful with compliments, as overuse or insincerity can lead to disaster. He suggests that compliments should be specific, genuine, and thoughtful. A man should not simply praise a lady's appearance, but also recognize her character, intelligence, and qualities that make her unique. Subtle signals, the art of reading body language. In a particularly engaging section, Darcy delves into the art of reading body language, a skill he insists is vital to successful courtship. "The body speaks a language of its own," he writes, "and a man who does not know how to interpret it is like a sailor who cannot read the stars." Darcy gives several examples of how to read a lady's gestures, posture, and facial expressions. He writes that while Elizabeth's words might have conveyed disapproval or disdain during their early encounters, her body language, her eyes, her smile, The subtle way she tilted her head showed a different side, one that Darcy failed to recognize in his initial arrogance. The eyes, he notes, are the truest reflection of a lady's feelings. A glance can convey more than 1,000 words. Through these observations, Darcy encourages his readers to be keenly aware of the small, subtle signs that indicate a lady's level of interest or comfort. He warns against overanalyzing every move, but stresses that the body's natural responses can be the most truthful expression of emotions. Building affection, small acts of kindness. As courtship deepens, Darcy emphasizes the importance of performing small, meaningful acts of kindness that demonstrate genuine affection. He recalls a pivotal moment in his relationship with Elizabeth when he stepped in to help her family during a crisis. Darcy admits that at the time, he did not fully understand how much his actions would influence Elizabeth's feelings toward him, but in retrospect, he acknowledges that his quiet acts of service were far more powerful than any grand speeches or gestures. Actions, Darcy reflects, speak louder than words, particularly when the words are those of a gentleman who has learned the value of humility. He advises that courtship is not merely about flattery or seeking admiration, but about showing respect and caring for a lady's well-being. Darcy argues that small gestures, like offering a thoughtful gift or offering assistance without being asked, reveal one's true feelings in a way that words cannot. The role of independence and space. Darcy also touches on a critical, often overlooked aspect of courtship, the need for independence and space. He reminds his readers that true affection does not require constant presence or attention. He writes, "A gentleman must understand that affection must be earned, not demanded. It is crucial not to suffocate the lady with one's attentions." He shares a moment from his own courtship with Elizabeth, when he was careful not to overstep his bounds and give her the space to form her own opinions about him. Darcy admits that he was not perfect in this regard, as his earlier actions, particularly his overbearing nature and interference in her sister's romance, often led to tension. However, he notes that true affection allows both parties to maintain their independence while still nurturing a connection. Part 3. The Path to Love and the Challenges of Commitment. In the final part of Mr. Darcy's Guide to Courtship, Fitzwilliam Darcy brings the reader into the deeper, more vulnerable stages of courtship, where the relationship evolves from mere attraction to genuine love. He is no longer the aloof gentleman we met in Part 1, nor the introspective suitor in Part 2. Instead, Darcy reveals himself as a man who has learned the transformative power of love, both its joy and its complexities. The power of vulnerability, opening your heart. Darcy begins by discussing vulnerability, a topic he admits he once avoided like the plague. In the early stages of his courtship with Elizabeth Bennet, Darcy was emotionally closed off, convinced that love was a fragile thing that, if exposed too quickly, could be easily shattered. He was cautious with his affections, afraid to reveal too much, too soon. Yet, in his reflections, he acknowledges that the path to true love requires letting down one's guard. A man must be willing to risk the safety of his heart, Darcy writes, if he is to discover the depth of affection that love truly offers. He recalls his internal struggle when he finally admitted to himself that his feelings for Elizabeth had grown far beyond mere admiration. In his earlier encounters with her, he had been aloof, restrained, even a bit proud. But as he spent more time with her, he saw beyond her wit and charm, into the true essence of her character. Slowly, the walls he had built around his heart began to crumble. "I found myself," he reflects, "revealing more of myself than I ever thought possible, and in return, Elizabeth allowed me a glimpse of her own heart." And therein lay the true magic of courtship. Darcy's narrative becomes more introspective here as he opens up about the fragility of love. He admits that in order to truly love, one must not only give of oneself, but also accept the vulnerability of another. "Love is not a contract," Darcy writes, "but an unspoken bond, where two souls meet and understand each other's deepest fears and desires. The struggle of misunderstandings, when perception becomes reality. In the next section, Darcy delves into the inevitable struggles that arise in courtship, misunderstandings, judgments, and the friction between appearances and reality. He points out that the course of true love rarely runs smooth, and even the most well-intentioned suitors can find themselves ensnared by their own misperceptions. Darcy's reflections on the initial tensions between him and Elizabeth are both humbling and enlightening. He confesses that at first, he saw her as beneath him, in part due to her social standing and in part due to her spirited and independent nature. His pride and his prejudices led him to misjudge her character entirely. Darcy writes, "How little I understood then that true worth is not in the outward trappings of wealth or position, but in the strength of one's character and heart." Elizabeth, in turn, misjudged him. She saw Darcy as arrogant and distant, incapable of genuine emotion. Darcy is both regretful and amused as he recalls their first major misunderstanding, the moment when Elizabeth first learned of his involvement in the separation of her sister Jane and Mr. Bingley. Darcy's shame and guilt are palpable in his words, but he also recognizes that this episode was a turning point. "I had misjudged Elizabeth," Darcy admits. "And she had misjudged me. But it was in those missteps that we both learned the most important lesson of all: love cannot thrive on assumptions or arrogance." Darcy offers his readers a piece of hard-won wisdom: never allow misunderstandings to fester. True love, he writes, requires open, honest communication. Without it, resentment grows and affection withers. The role of respect, the foundation of a lasting relationship. As the relationship with Elizabeth deepens, Darcy begins to focus on the role of respect in building a strong, lasting foundation for love. While passion and attraction are essential, Darcy believes that mutual respect is the cornerstone of any successful relationship. He reflects on the pivotal moments when he truly began to see Elizabeth as his equal, not just in intellect, but in spirit. "I could not love a woman I did not respect," Darcy writes. "And through my courtship of Elizabeth, I realized that respect was not something earned over time. It was a choice I made daily." He contrasts his feelings for Elizabeth with his past relationships, particularly the more superficial infatuations he had entertained before. He recognizes that while attraction can be immediate, love is built on a foundation of respect, understanding, and shared values. "It is easy to be infatuated," he writes. "But to truly love is to see the other person, fully and completely, and to accept them for who they are." Darcy acknowledges that, at times, he struggled with his own pride and sense of superiority, but Elizabeth's constant challenge to his assumptions forced him to grow. He realized that only by embracing her as an equal, with her own opinions, strengths, and faults, could he fully understand the nature of their love. "Love is not possession," Darcy writes, "but partnership. And only through respect can two people build a relationship that will endure." Commitment, the final step in courtship. Finally, Darcy turns to the subject of commitment, the most important and final step in courtship. He reflects on his own hesitation before proposing to Elizabeth, the doubts that plagued him despite his strong feelings. His thoughts reveal the depth of his emotional turmoil as he worries about how their differences, social class, personal values, might affect their future together. But Darcy also acknowledges that commitment is not about perfection. It's about making a choice. "I chose Elizabeth, despite my doubts, despite my fears," he writes, "because I knew, in my heart, that she was worth every challenge, every obstacle." True love is not an easy path, but it is the only path worth walking. Darcy's proposal to Elizabeth was not the grand, sweeping declaration of love he had once imagined. Instead, it was a humble and heartfelt moment, one that reflected his growth throughout the course of their courtship. He did not promise a life free from struggle or difficulty, but he vowed to stand by her side, in both good times and bad. The true test of a relationship, Darcy writes, is not in the moments of happiness, but in how two people face adversity together. A proposal, like love itself, must come from a place of mutual respect, understanding, and a shared commitment to the future. The conclusion: love and the future. In the final words of the guide, Darcy offers a vision of the future. He writes that love is not a destination, but a journey that continues to evolve. Though his own courtship with Elizabeth has reached its culmination, Darcy suggests that their love is just beginning, because true love, once formed, only grows stronger with time. He concludes with a reflection on the ultimate lesson he has learned from his courtship with Elizabeth Bennet. Love is not something that is merely won. It is something that must be nurtured, cherished, and continually chosen. It is a living thing, and it requires the care of both partners to flourish. Thanks for listening. Please like, subscribe, and click the bell icon to get new video updates. Happy learning!